Hello and welcome back to Exothermic Plays Games. I'm Exothermic and the date today is Thursday, November 28th, 2024. For my American viewers, I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving, and for everyone else, I also hope you have a great day with some great people and comforting food. But that's not why we're here. I've been doing a daily countdown of my 366 favorite video games of all time, and coming in at number 34 is Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. We're getting there. We're getting so close to my favorite Pokemon game, but we're not quite there yet. This is, however, my highest ranked game for the Game Boy Advance. It was truly a remarkable little platform, and I got a ton of mileage out of mine. I remember when my aunt got married, I was at a beach wedding, and we'd rented these little cabins right up on the beach, and I was, I think, 9 years old at the time, and Pokemon Sapphire had released earlier that year in North America, and I realized the ceremony was starting, but I was still in the cabin because I had totally lost track of time playing this game. And I came sprinting down the beach towards the chairs set up and down the aisle and everything. I think the ceremony itself had actually, kind of started at that point. So what I'm trying to say here is that Pokemon Sapphire is so good, I didn't feel that bad about almost ruining a wedding ceremony. Oops. Moving on to the game here, I do want to mention that as with every mainline Pokemon title, I've made a companion video ranking all of the new Pokemon introduced from the generation, and you could find the link to that in the description below. Regarding gameplay, I generally assume that most people watching these older Pokemon videos know how these games work, but just in case you're somehow not, here's a very quick rundown. You live in a world of adventure and adorable little monsters called Pokemon, which you can tame and battle with against other trainers. Pokemon have different types such as fire, water, fighting, grass, poison, and so on, and you can learn up to 4 attacks at a time. Many, but not all, attacks do damage and have their own typings, and the damage is in part determined by the type of the attack and the type of the Pokemon. For example, Flamethrower fire attack is super effective against grass Pokemon, but not very effective against water Pokemon. If you capture more of your own Pokemon, you train them and level them up, causing them to evolve into bigger, stronger versions of themselves, and take on a series of increasingly difficult gym battles, culminating in challenging the Elite Four and overall champion of the region, becoming such yourself. Along the way, you become engrossed in a conflict of a larger scale and wind up saving the region from some terrible trouble, the end. So yeah, that was a very glossed over and generalized version of how these games work, but the third generation has a lot of actually great things going for it. For starters, I think it has the strongest overall plot of the franchise, and in addition to your own journey to become the region's champion, there's a couple other characters along that path with you. Your rival is there, of course, but the champion you face at the end is actually Wally. He's a kid like you, except he's been struggling with chronic illness and dreams of becoming a Pokemon master. In this game, your dad is actually the gym leader for the first gym you have to beat, and between him and yourself, you help Wally kickstart his journey. There's a few times that you run into him again throughout the game, but it's pretty cool for him to be the champion in the end, with your respective journeys converging at the highest level. But that's not, the big story here, of course. Like most Pokemon games, there's an antagonist faction that is doing evil stuff for you to stop. Unlike most Pokemon games, there's more than one. Team Aqua and Team Magma are two warring factions that are both evil, and you get some real story differences depending on which version of the game you are playing. It's actually a fairly minor difference, except for the end. If you're playing Sapphire, Team Aqua succeeds in their dastardly plot. If you're playing Ruby, it's Team Magma. The problem is, despite all of the research and intelligence, technology, and other resources of these massive organizations, their leaders are massive idiots. Team Aqua awakens Kyogre to cause just huge torrential downpours and expand the oceans of the region. Team Magma unleashes Groudon, creating droughts that shrink the ocean and increase the land mass. Both of these are terrible ideas that would utterly destroy the entire ecosystem and make the place pretty much completely uninhabitable, not only for humans, but also cause a lot of problems for the wildlife that these organizations were originally aiming to help. anyone could have predicted this, and they only realize that they made an oopsie when it actually happens, and then they're like, please save us. This is beyond dumb, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy their constant fighting, and more importantly, incredibly petty arguments. Plus the actual climax where this happens and you have to go save the day is super cool, and some of the most cinematic storytelling in the franchise. But the story improvements aren't the only changes going on with Ruby and Sapphire. Amongst many mechanical additions the game brought, like nature and abilities, the most important was double battles. Having 2v2 fights is a totally different atmosphere for Pokemon, and is, I think, the best way to do combat in the game. It's actually wild to me that the only games we've seen that be the main way to do it is in Pokemon Colosseum and its sequel, which certainly have their issues, but the battle isn't one of them. In my Scarlet and Violet ranking, I talked about how disappointing the cooperative multiplayer was, and that's because I hoped my wife and I would be able to go through most of the game doing twos, and that's unfortunately not what it was like at all. The strategic depth and opportunity for unique and cool Pokemon, like Minun and Plusle, for example, is spectacular, and I would give so much for a full-blown Pokemon game built from the ground up entirely for team battles. There's a lot of other fun stuff as well that's less game-changing, but are very much welcome additions. Secret bases are a cute little thing you can do where you can find, earn, or purchase decorations, and then make your own cute little space with all sorts of sweet stuff. It's nothing crazy, but I very much enjoyed messing with it, especially like having the little notepad, floor pad things. Those are fun for sure. And I wish they'd do something to bring more of those elements back into the games, regarding like player housing or something. But the weirdest addition was Pokemon contests. Adding an entire other mode of play that's not the traditional battling was wild, and these stuck around for a few generations. Obviously, they weren't that popular in the long run, I guess, because they're not doing them anymore, but I think it's great to have something else causing you to evaluate what every single move does. Maybe it's the development time, maybe there was a lack of interest. I never got super into contests, but I'll admit I think the newer games are worse for not having them, or at least something else like it that causes you to fundamentally reevaluate everything about your team beyond just battles. Like, it allows different Pokemon that I would never do in like a regular battle become suddenly good in different types of these contests, because for example you have basically a type, like they can be a cute contest or a smart contest or whatever, and so you need to have a diverse set of Pokemon to win each one. Ruby and Sapphire were a turning point in the franchise where we started seeing each generation feel truly different beyond just new Pokemon and new battles. The story is all new, there's systems that are all new, and of course the graphics were a big step up from the Game Boy titles, with a classic feel that I think still holds up today as the best of a very stylized pixel art, as opposed to mixing in partial 3D rendering. Rubies, Sapphires, and Emeralds are truly the crowning jewels of the Game Boy Advance. Join me tomorrow as I talk about my 33rd favorite game, where every choice matters, but the most important one is chilling with my dog.